You have a lot of people who are being presented with this information, but they don't have any kind of foundations to do anything with the information. So basically what's going on YouTube and the so-called truther community is everybody's just guessing. So you watch these channels that constantly refer to themselves as being in a truther community, yet they have no truth. The only thing they have is an observation of lies. And I've said this before, there's a difference between an observation of a lie, which is a part of a truth, but the other half, at least, of truth is the actual truth of like the observer's ability, the complexities of that observer's ability, the complexities of this experience overall. It's not about reacting to what the manipulators of this system has done to us, to our consciousness, so much so as it's our responsibility to activate within us that which is completely way more vibrant than anything that these reactive little trickster alchemists can throw together. And they've been working this magic for so long because they were just one little smidge ahead of the curve than the overall collective consciousness. So let's see this and for people who are talking about like an awakening and enlightenment, people can come into all this stuff. Just think of it from this example. Think of it as somebody or a group of people back in the day having control of all the information across the world. You can go back in the day 500 years, you can go 1,000 years, whatever it is, talking about the control grid overall. That's basically control of the internet. So control of our perspective of this reality back then was heliocentrism. Today, when Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue and came back, and then they started conquering and genociding and murdering the original people to this so-called new world, the Americas. Like, this whole story is still accepted in reality or in everyday society as the norm. And what gets me every time is that when you bring that up, these so-called truthers still don't have anything to say about that. What happens is they have all this information. They've conditioned themselves to go against something so much they don't know what they're for. They don't know what they're about. So they've created this interactive space of I'm right because you're wrong. But they don't really go into understanding, and overstanding what it means. What it means to have a situation where you have this right and wrong in a world of electric and magnetic, in a world of light and dark. These are whole different worlds of consciousness that are being disregarded because the intellectual maturity of the individuals has been dumbed down since the same time the belief system in an illusory universe was created. So when they create that illusory universe in your reality and then sell it back to you, it does affect your consciousness. This is just like kidnapping a little child and raising that child for the rest of their life. And then they develop that Stockholm syndrome. And then they become your family now. They've adjusted their entire persona, their entire beingness, their entire soul's engagement in this reality, their entire experiences engagement in this reality because of their external mind controls. So this is what's happening on a large scale. And we have people who haven't really been as affected by those mind controls as others. This is where so-called white privilege comes in. And when you have those people still saying that everything is okay because we're all human. So this is basic. Is it that easy? Is it that simple? Does healing just take an acknowledgement of a cure? Or does it take an actual doctor and an entire hospital and time and energy and effort? Does it take all that work? Or does it take a fucking meme? Does it take a quick quote from some kind of spiritual guru at some time that's going to make everything feel okay? What is it? Well, today in the so-called truther community, it's boiling down to this. Well, the bad guys are out there and we know about all this stuff, and maybe it's, a reality breakdown. Maybe it's the Mandela effect. Maybe it's this. Maybe it's that. So you have all these so-called white people out there. They have no actual foundations. So this is where it jumps off at. This is why you have so many arrogant so-called truthers out there, mostly so-called white people, who are out there. They're out there saying and doing all of this stuff. They are empowered by the system, ignorantly empowered by the system to just regurgitate what they think is the end all be all of reality, and you should just accept it. They are empowered by the same kind of mechanism that empowers so-called white people to say that they are the forefathers of this land and they are the controllers of this land and they have the right to install immigration laws and enforce immigration laws when they themselves are immigrants. And not only immigrants, but fucking criminals. So on that note, you have all these people out here who are powerless. They're helpless. They have nothing to consciously provide to what's going on. So in their process of finding their way back to themselves, they have to arrogantly, the only way they know, tell the world that you've been Mandela affected and the world is just a reality breakdown and it's not about racism doesn't matter and all this stuff doesn't matter. That's the stuff that's been installed and that's what the system is trying to control you with. What's more of a danger, what's more of a control mechanism is the arrogance and the arrogance of people to get out there and just talk all this bullshit and still not acknowledge the shit that has happened. Still not acknowledge. Stand up there on your pedestal. That pedestal, that podium is still dripping blood. That podium that you're standing on is still on top of ancient burial grounds. And you have the nerve to stand up there and tell people who have been persecuted for hundreds of years, you have the nerve to tell them what they and their ancestors have experienced doesn't matter because now it's all about a simulated reality. Go fuck yourself. This is that same mentality that the new age is selling with aliens. It's this spiritual nihilism. You get it from the scientific community. You get it from the so-called spiritual community and the new age community. You get it from the so-called truther community. You get it from the flat earth community when they tell you all you got to do is find Jesus and tell the world that the world is flat. And then that'll fix everything. What the fuck is that? That's the reactive. That's still reactive truth. Now they have all these subscribers, all these followers. They jumped into all this shit and they have no fucking idea because they never had any grounding. They have never had any roots. They just threw everything together with their arrogant, egotistical ass approach to what's going on, never having any kind of ancestral connections to anything. And then they just go out there and then the YouTube says, oh, just like they did back in the day when they were sharing the perspectives of heliocentrism to the world through the newspapers and the university system and word of mouth and the governments and the kings and the queens and all that bullshit. They went around the world telling their lie about the heliocentric universe. They went around the world telling their lie about a blonde-haired, blue-eyed Jesus, and they went around the world telling the lie about the new world and this whole like we're here to evolve humanity just because the lie of evolution from monkeys, from the Big Bang to dinosaurs to monkeys to you, that they're here. They've been doing that forever. For hundreds and hundreds of years, at least. In our lifetimes, it's been forever. So if you think that whatever needs to change right now is only relative to what's happened in this lifetime or your lifetime or even your great-great-grandparents' lifetimes, you are severely fucking naive. It ain't got shit to do with you or any of your other previous generations, even 3, 4, 5 generations back. They are just a reflection of what you are right now, going all the way back to the original enslavement. the enslavement of your soul, then the enslavement of your mind, which was heliocentrism, then the enslavement of your physical body, which is people getting lynched on the streets with guns, and people getting literally lynched on the streets by people who are still inhabiting, still expressing those destructive ass supremacist values that have been passed down through your generations and are continually being passed down today. This is a cancer. It is a disease. And people to this day still ignore it and act like it doesn't matter. So what matters most? What matters most? What Trump is doing today, or what somebody in your own house is doing to you and your family every single day? What's more important to address? The lies that are being installed into the individuals every single day, or the one little focus group that is like a Donald Trump, which is obviously the distraction. So you have the distraction of an individual like that. Even truth can be a distraction. Look at what's happened to Flat Earth. Look at what's happened to the Black conscious community. Look at what's happened to the New Age community. Look at what's happened to all these. So there's good things in all of these so-called communities. But what happens is the fucked up people get in there and around all those tools, which are meant to be tools. And then they start selling those tools to other people. They commercialize that which is natural. So they are doing with the same thing that the colonizers did back in the day, just in their own way now. So on YouTube, with all these fake ass YouTube truthers, you have them talking about their version of truth. And since they have an authority, which is their YouTube, Google sponsored following or subscribership, people actually believe them. So this is another way to construct a false truth. This is what I've been talking about for the last however many years, telling you that Google, YouTube, Facebook, the entire social media that traces back to Western mind control, the media, the colonial mind control program, all of this is one thing. It's designed to maintain control over your thoughts, your movement, and control every kind of interaction that you have, down to even your own relationships, to create either a false movement or a lack of movement. That's what's happening with all this information out there. And what happens as a side effect to this wealth of information out there is that you have people who now, just like in the New Age community, they have all these tools. They have crystals and meditation. They meditate now, and yoga and all this shit. And now they think they're an enlightened being. Well, what's happening on the other side of other communities? They have all this information about what's going on, truth, Alex Jones, and all this other stuff. And now they think they're an enlightened being. But they have that's only half at best of the actual information. And even actually, it's only like a quarter at best, because you're still getting information from something else or somebody else, and you're not really birthing that information out of your own antenna, out of your own perspective. That's not happening. The internet is pre-chewing this information, and then it sells that information to YouTubers, and then they pre-chew it and sell it to everybody else. And by the time it gets to the individual, they got to pre-chew it to tell themselves what's going on. And after they pre-chew it, then they got to set to pre-chew it to somebody else. So you see how much pre-chewed information we got now? There's no nutrients there. There's no minerals. But we've been so mineral deficient for so long, any little ounce of minerals out there is going to look like a fucking golden ticket. So you have these empty, repetitive ass YouTubers out there who are just throwing a bunch of maybes out there. Maybe it's a simulation theory. Maybe the Mandela effect is this. Maybe flat earth is that. Maybe there's a dome. Maybe it's an infinite plane. Maybe white people this. Maybe black people this. Maybe the world this. Maybe politics this. You know, there's always these, maybe quantum's this. Maybe all this stuff. You know, there's all these maybes out there. This is a world of maybe consciousness. And in a world, and it's always been a world of maybe consciousness. This is what NASA is. NASA is the tippy top pinnacle, perpetrator of maybe consciousness. And they've sold lies, maybe lies forever. And now you have people who are just copying and pasting that. And this is the thing. NASA sold that because they have no foundations. They only had a lie. They had the illusion of authority. And they had the illusion of authority on stolen land, not to mention the illusion of authority over your psyche. That's another video. But the illusion of authority in that moment, you know, with Russia going to the moon and all that other stuff, this was preconceived or whatever that word is, before NASA was even started, because they started this in the first mind controls. This was like early 1900s with the first movie that came out. It was about going to the moon. So you have all of these prepositioned, self-imploding, self-destructive worlds that are out there, and they're all designed to turn you into a nihilist of your comfort. So on your journey, if you go into the new age world, this is what happens. A nihilist of your own choice style is no different than people getting to the end of a learning process, and it's time for them to let that go and move on to another challenge, another learning process. It's no different than them, an individual getting to that and then ignoring the signs of needing to move on, and then just kind of repeating, turning back and walking backwards on that path and going back into that village that they just left, village of consciousness in a sense, like learning or something. You go back to a village where you've already learned all the lessons that you needed to learn, and you've got all those signs. You go back there, you're going to get hit with all these signs day in and day out. So this is what's happening on a macro scale to everybody. We keep asking the system. We keep going back to this self-destructive, not giving a fuck about us as system, the proven system that it is against nature, that it is against the people, that it is against expansion of consciousness. It is totally against that. This is what the evolution theory is. This is what the Big Bang theory is. This is what all the scientism community is about. This is what mainstream media is. This is what your fake ass controlled opposition truth or community is. It's all to keep you in a space of thinking that you're evolving, expanding, becoming enlightened, and all this other bullshit. It's there to have the appearance of doing all of that, but you're really not doing anything. You're allowing the system to stay afloat on the macro scale and internally in your own shit. They're walking on somebody else's bullshit. And anytime they step on something that needs to, that should bring attention to their own experience, their legs do not give them that response. Because they're not their legs. They're somebody else's legs. There's somebody else's nerve endings in their feet when they step on something that they should clean up. They're numb. Their legs are fucking numb. And they're walking this path of everyday experience with absolutely nothing, no feeling, no accountability, no nothing. This is the everyday reality, all the way up to your so-called truth community, including the so-called flat earth community. It starts out with the Big Bang. It's not about what you're talking about. It's how. It's not so much about what you're talking about. It's how you're talking about what you're talking about and why you're talking, why these things exist and how they exist. But simple-minded as people stay in the pinnacle. That see, when you have this maybe consciousness, maybe it's a simulation, maybe the Mandela effect is this. When you have this maybe consciousness, that is actually the top of the pyramid of an outdated consciousness. Let me say that again. When you're in that maybe world, you're at the pinnacle of a pyramid or a level of consciousness you're at the pinnacle of a level of consciousness that is begging you to move on. The test is Once you reach the top of that castle, once you reach the top of that crown, the test is, are you going to stay there and act like a king amongst other people because of your own egotistical desires? Maybe they're unconscious. Maybe they're subconscious. Maybe there's something you got to work on. I don't know. Maybe it's conscious. Maybe you want to look like the smartest person in the internet. Maybe you want to look and seem that way. The arrogance can only go so far. You'll max out at the consciousness of arrogance. You'll max out at the consciousness of ego. I mean, these are actual consciousness they're very general kind of suits you can put on people to see what's their main approach to things. But like I said, you're going to max out. So when you have this all-encompassing approach to information, once you hit a peak and you think you got all the answers, well, obviously you don't have all the answers. So maybe you have to analyze, go back into what you were talking about that made you think that you had all the answers, and start analyzing that from a deeper perspective. Trace what you've just learned to a deeper perspective. You have to go deeper into those roots in order to transition into the next level of consciousness, into the next interpretation of what you just evolved from. Evolving into the next interpretation of what you just evolved from. Now, once you hit the peak of one level of consciousness and you stay there, which is your choice, you stay there, you can appear to be a king and you can appear to be a queen and all this other stuff. So this is no different than, say, like me, like getting out of high school, and then I wanted to, become a baseball player, and then I found out all this information and all this other stuff. Or I wanted to become an actor, and I found out all this information and stuff because I was in drama class. This is what I wanted to do when I was graduating high school. It was like that was the only thing that was interesting to me, and it was kind of like now. It was a direct sort of let's talk about this shit. Even back then, I was talking about like different kind of information that was on the fringe of mainstream discussions. So it was like the most extreme shit out there. It was like, let me challenge myself. Let me go to AAA. Let me do all this other stuff. But a bigger challenge was going into the military. So that's what I did. The thing is, for example purposes, if I had went into, let's just say, to Hollywood or whatever, I would have to ignore a large part of, my ancestry, a large part of what I've learned over my expansion. I would have to, in a sense, ignore a lot of that information because of the life that I have chosen and the experience, that world, that ceiling, that is that world that I just adopted as my own. I can only go as far as that world will allow me to go. So this is what's happening individually, and people's egos and their own conditioning is what's determining how far they will go, is what's determining how they will interpret information. It's determining how they will even interact with people. So this is why you have people in the truther community telling you that only certain truth is acceptable. The same way the mainstream media. So when I talk about racism, white supremacy, and all that other stuff has been going on for years and years and years, you got hundreds of thousands of fucking families out there that are still benefiting off of the land that was stolen, the money, the legislature that was created based upon race. That is a truth. And yet today you have truthers telling you that truth doesn't matter simply because the system is using race as a weapon against the people. That's what they're telling you. That's the ceiling. That's the ceiling for individuals. Individuals hit that ceiling internally because of what they've been conditioned with over so many years and even generations, and they're not even aware of it. So they feel powerless a lot of the times. And what they do a lot of the times, when, say, we're Hollywood actors, or if I would have went into the MLB or anything like that, I would have been hopeless if I would have been limited by the world that I've chosen to become a part of. So the world that the mainstream truther community has chosen to be a part of is the reactionary truth, is the truth that is kind of bubblegum truth. It's this, this is what Alex Jones was out there to do. He wasn't actually out there to do anything specific, more so than to kind of create uncertainty in what truth is really about. So, and information is really about, and movement is really about, and revolution is really about. It's this Eurocentric version of what revolution is. It's a Eurocentric version of evolution, of change, of consciousness. That's what the so-called truth community is. This is what the mechanism does. The main thing it does that makes people, that gets installed into the individual, they don't have to do anything to the communities, because the conditioning programs are in the individuals. So what's happening is you have all this unfinished work, all this stinking ass soul breath that these people have, that they ain't flossed that old shit out of their teeth from lifetimes ago. They ain't flossed those lessons and those challenges out of their grill from lifetimes ago. And then they get up on internet, on YouTube and on the TV with that stinking ass, hot ass garbage breath, that hot ass soul breath. And then they just start getting out there talking about racism doesn't matter. Maybe it's a simulation. Maybe we're all just this and maybe that and see you next time. The same way Ancient Aliens says, maybe aliens built the pyramids. Maybe aliens, ancient astronaut theory. It's the same code. It's the same fucking code. And anybody that's out there that is promoting that code to the masses of people will get pushed in a certain way. They will get put out there in a certain way. How hard do you think it is for them to play with the numbers of YouTube? How hard do you really think it is? It's as simple as an individual looking at a computer screen on his laptop, even on a tablet, looking at their screen, having, a column, 2 columns. This is a column of channels that we want to promote. Boom. This is a column of channels that we want to censor. Boom. Activate. Check it every day. Manipulate it every day. Make it look natural. Make it look like this is, a regular thing. Make it look like YouTube and Google is still organic in its numbers and everything. It's still YouTube. It's not they tube. It's your tube. It's your truth. It's not ours. No, it's you doing it. Go on out there. Good job. Good job, little truther. You found the Mandela effect. You found flat Earth. Good job, truther. Golf clap for you. Great job. You are on your path of a higher, evolved individual. Sooner or later, you'll be having conversations with Oprah and Tony Robbins and Eckhart Tolle and everybody else that's in the mainstream New Age evolution program. You'll be up there with us. Just work your way through it and you'll get there. What that's doing is creating a limitation of, like I said, there's a limitation in the world of Hollywood or Major League Baseball or the business industry or the whatever kind of corporate industry that's out there. You're not born into a corporate industry. They put you as a corporate person. You got to break out of that shit. So once you break out of that shit, your limitations are up to you. Your limitations are no longer based upon the experiences passed down by so-called forefathers and genocidal maniacs. Your potential, your limitations are based upon the experience itself. This is what we are engaging right now. The experience itself. This is why cannabis is criminalized and psychedelics are criminalized, because they have to have a control over your experience itself. It ain't got shit to do with the mechanisms of how they control your experience. Like I said, it's not the mechanisms. It's how and why those mechanisms exist in the first place. Once you start asking and answering how and why those mechanisms exist in the first place, you will start unveiling your own energy, your own natural approach to this reality, your own natural approach to this revolution, not this Eurocentric, Euro-colonial minded sort of new age. Everything is awesome. We need to just do this. We need to just talk about reptilians. We need to just talk about a simulated reality. We need to just talk about a reality break. Get the fuck out of here with all that simple-minded ass bullshit. You ain't doing nothing but regurgitating everything that the system has put out there for you to regurgitate. There's nothing organic about your expression, period. It's all just as regurgitated as bullshit. What the system is doing, including the truther community, including the New Age community, and especially the New Age and truther community. It's obvious with the mainstream media and the American dream. They show you the moon. They televise the moon. They put the moon on social media. They put all this shit, the American dream. They make you dream about the moon, knowing that your ass is going to fail because that's the design of the system. Some people fail more than others. That's a result of the mind control programs of the past. And they're not going to try to change any of that shit. Why? Because it benefits them today. They love that shit. They're not going to talk about racism when their great-great-great-grandkids are the ones that are going to be benefiting from that racism. You think they're going to fucking say anything about that? No. So they got to make these truthers tell other people that they're wrong for even talking about it. Because the system is used. This is like a double reverse psychology. They tell truthers to tell other people that they're wrong for talking about race because this controlled opposition system and the system itself is using race against the people. But your power, one of your power centers, is in your interpretation of this physical reality. It's not only about the psychological consciousness. It's not only about the mind consciousness. It's not only about the spiritual consciousness. It's how they all work together. And the spiritual nihilists, the new age nihilists, the scientific nihilists, the truther nihilists are out there hitting their heads on all their ceilings because they're still reacting and still relying on something else. They're not really doing the work. This is the side effect to an abundance of information that is the internet and all this other shit, an abundance of access to information. Having all this information, it's like having things to do and you never do them. So you just become this like lazy ass person. But that also carries into when people actually do start doing the work, they're still lazy ass people because this is a lazy ass society. So when you have a truther community, you have a half-ass, lazy ass truther community because you have half-ass, lazy ass people doing half-ass, lazy ass research. And then the arrogance and the ego comes in to hide the fact that they didn't do any fucking research. So they're glorifying themselves in this world of spiritual nihilism, intellectual nihilism. They're hopeless, empty, have nowhere to go. And the only thing they can do is talk about lies and react to the next big fucking distraction. This is what's happening right now with the so-called truther community. They're engaging in nihilism because they're engaging in half-truth. The truth that is only reactive. The truth that is ungrounded. The truth that only goes so far. The truth that is only a reflection of what the so-called powers that be placed out there for you to distract yourself with. Why is it taboo to even speak about whiteness? Because it's heavily ingrained in the system itself. The same way racism is heavily ingrained in the way people refer to themselves as white. White people can't deal with racism because they still call themselves white. Let me say that shit again for the fucking nosebleed section. White people cannot address racism, white racism. They cannot address that because they still refer to themselves as that sick and empty ass label. It's involved in their own. Addressing racism involves addressing themselves, involves addressing changing themselves. This is why racism truth is taboo in the so-called truth community. This is what's happening right now. The truth is being filibustered by people who have a limited interpretation of truth based upon their bullshit ass, privileged ass experiences. And they can't go into that. They can't go into figuring out any deeper truths because that will involve figuring out deeper truths and changing themselves, which is the hardest thing to do, is to change yourself.